It's Monday. Time for another week. Hi, everybody. I'm Russ Kane. This is the Midday Show. Got a packed week for you this week. Monster week. Got brilliant guests coming up today. Anyway, I am Russ Kane, and welcome. Thank you very much, everybody coming along. You know, I'm just back from walking the dog, right? I had to get away from my screen. I just had to get away from staring at my screen hour after hour. So I thought I'll take the dog for an early walk, and I'll probably take her out later this afternoon. And I'm wearing my Doc Martens because it's muddy and everything, right? The laces come loose. This is an art form. You ready? My laces come loose in the middle of a park. I then do the laces up, and I've managed to tie the dog lead inside my bootlaces. If I had a brain, I would be dangerous. Extraordinary. Anyway, there we go. I couldn't understand why she was so... I couldn't understand why my little dog was stuck, and I'm looking down at her lead. I've tied a double knot, and it's inside my bootlaces. I don't know where Neil's gone. I was chatting to Neil. Neil's just disappeared. He's just gone. Oh, he could be coming back. Ladies and gentlemen, is he ready? You know him. You love him. He's now returned. He is the king of comedy within, I'm going to extend it, a 4-mile radius of the Tolworth Tower. Oh, yeah. Neil Longie Long.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I'm still reading. We can't discuss it, but you were saying that somebody made a very... I mean, we're not going to go into details. You know, Neil does stand up all the time, right? And he's bloody good at it. And somebody made a most terribly inappropriate joke. And in 2020, I mean,
well, it wasn't even funny. It was
it wasn't a funny gag. It was just
it was blatantly racist. And I've never, I hardly ever, I hear racism addressed an awful lot. And that's normally by people of colour doing it in a very clever way. And I've heard it done by white people in a very clever way. But this was a white guy, and it was just blatantly racist. It was just rude. And I've not heard that for forever. It was just, and it wasn't even funny. It wasn't
stupid.
Even...
What's the point? I don't. Did it die on its ass?
It bombed. The room went absolutely silent, and it was a good room. It was a great room. I went down really well. A lady, colleague, comedian of mine, my friend. She head of mine.
One of my colleagues that I allowed to appear on the stage at the same time.
Yes, I know. Grace my stage, and she absolutely stormed it. As did and the other comedians did pretty all right. It was basically a new material night.
When the guy died on his ass so spectacularly, did he do a good cut? Because real professional comedians just make use of that terrible silence. And
he didn't. He said, well, that normally works.
And you thought, are you mad?
Where would that work?
The Ku Klux Klan meetings.
If there'd been a greater number of black people in the audience, he could have got himself in trouble. And I can understand why.
Well, on the one hand, it's a kind of backhanded compliment. On the other hand, it's really not. Here's your pal, Robert Van Buren, DJ from Stockholm.
Have you got a couple of minutes for me to tell you something before we get started?
I'm all yours. I'm waiting for prostate cancer people to turn up. Not with me personally, thank God, but you know, they're meant to be here.
Had an awful day Saturday. A friend of mine's cat went missing, and this is a house cat.
Right.
So it's not used to cars or people or even rain, for that matter. And we put it all out on the socials. Spoiler alert: the cat is returned safe and well. He's fine.
Thank God.
But guess who came out of the woodwork? Scammers, right?
Get out!
And I got scammed out of 50 quid.
No.
It was recommended on Facebook.
Amy, I can see you in the digital green room. I'm waving. She's waving back. We've got to hear this cat story.
Somebody recommended, and they said, use these people. They're really good at tracking lost pets. And because it was a recommendation, because we were panicking a bit, I clicked on it and spoke to the Facebook business chat. And they said, yeah, we use drone technology, £50 service fee. I said, right, I'll do anything, because my friend was absolutely distraught. So signed up for the 50 quid. 5 minutes later, we've located your cat. He was taken in by a neighbour. He's within 2 kilometres. That was the first red flag. Kilometres? What country is this? And
Yeah,
then some of
right.
the language. And then we looked a bit closer, looked at who it was recommended by, and it was recommended by someone called Romesh. That's primarily an Asian name, and this person was
You
not Asian.
think?
This person did not look like a Romesh. Well, they will be people of color generally with a name like Romesh. You would have thought, wouldn't you? But this
Or on
person was
funny comedians.
or on funny comedians was as white as you and me. And it was, and then they said, so we've got the data, but you need another £90 to send you the data. And then I started challenging them, and they all know the management won't let us release it, and this is just bullshit. Then we found the cat, so it was blatantly obvious they were lying.
You've
I would love to
reported it,
name and shame them. I will on Facebook, because then another one came forward, and by this time I cottoned on, and I played my little game of let's wind up the scammer, and I had a hell of a lot of fun with this one last night.
Should we hear of it after we've spoken to our guest?
Well, that's the story, but just be careful.
But unbelievable. Be careful. What's the name of these unscrupulous bastards?
Can I tell you? Can I say?
Sure.
All right. They are. I'll just look them up. Hold on.
Coming to you, Amy. Good things are worth waiting for. That's what I always say.
Okay. They are called.
Yeah.
Oh, my phone is doing weird things. Hold on.
All right.
It's just trying to log me in. Okay. They are called Pause, as in PAWS.
Yeah.
Pause for Love Rescue.
Oh, come on. That's such a good name.
Yeah. Pause for
right.
Love
Time
Rescue.
now. Right. Well, be careful. We'll speak about more about this. Now, this is a subject I was going to say close to my heart.
Amy!
I was going to say close to my heart, but it's probably closer to my bottom. Ladies and gentlemen, Amy Rylance is in the house.
Good afternoon.
Hello, Amy Rylance. How are you? Good afternoon.
Amy. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Yes, good. Thank you.
This is such an important subject. So, is there a new... Tell us what's going on.
Yeah. So, I'm talking today about some very exciting new research. Ooh. So one of the challenges with prostate cancer is that no two men's prostate cancer is the same. So we don't always know when we diagnose a man how aggressive that cancer is going to be. And because cancer treatments have lots of side effects, we want to give every man the bare minimum of treatment that's going to keep him alive.
Right.
But we know that there are some men who, when we treat them with surgery or treat them with radiotherapy, that cancer still comes back. And at the moment, we don't have a way of knowing which men that will be. Okay. This research is really exciting because this research is looking for the signature of that aggressive disease so that we can do a simple test on diagnosis to understand which men have a really aggressive cancer, so that we can get in there, we can treat it aggressively, and we can stop it from being a killer.
Wow. You must be, you must be thrilled with that.
It sounds incredible, because obviously the earlier you catch things, the better, and knowing what you're dealing with. And you're absolutely right, of course, Amy, no two cancers are the same. But what I heard about prostate cancer, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that generally people tend to die with it, not from it. It's generally relatively slow growing. Is that a truism, or have I been misinformed there?
So I have to say it is one of the comments that causes the most irritation amongst some of our supporters. And the reason for that is that actually around 12,000 men die of prostate cancer every single year in the UK. And so it's really frustrating for men who are diagnosed with terminal prostate cancer when people kind of minimize their illness. And really what's crucial to understand is what type of prostate cancer do you have?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to minimize it. I just wondered what the figures were. My understanding that it was relatively, generally speaking, relatively slow growing. So that's what I understood.
So over 50,000 men will be diagnosed every year, and 12,000 men die every year. And so what that tells us is that for most men, prostate cancer can be easily treated. And the earlier you diagnose it, the easier it is to treat. But what this research is about is identifying really rapidly who are those men who have that potentially deadly disease, so that you can get in there and treat them appropriately.
So how does this work? How does this research come about?
So this is some research being led by Professor Ros Eales from the Institute of Cancer Research. And what she has done is she has samples from over 2,000 men who have had prostate cancer.
Yeah.
And the research is looking at the DNA within those samples. Now, within a single human cell, we have over 6 foot of DNA. Each sample.
What? Say that again slowly. What
if
the
you were
heck?
to write out the DNA from a single human cell, it would stretch to 6 foot.
Wow.
Now, each sample contains hundreds and thousands of cells, and we have 2,000 men's samples. And so that is far more data than any human being can compute. You know, it would be a lifetime's work to try and work your way through all of that. And probably, to be honest, no human being could do it. But by using AI, by using computers, what we're able to do is very rapidly analyze that data and look for patterns. And what we're looking for is the patterns that indicate the cancer that is more aggressive, because that then becomes essentially a telltale signature that we can look for in other men who are newly diagnosed.
Amy, as you know, this is something which resonates very heavily with me. It killed my father, and I watched him go, and it always at the back of my mind, oh God, I hope it's not genetic, because I can really do without it. Now, this is a difficult question, but I think loads of people, first of all, please confirm this is time sensitive. Don't just sit around, no pun intended, thinking it might just go away like a bad cold or something. It's properly, talk us through the sort of time frame, if you would.
What we know for a fact is that the earlier you diagnose prostate cancer, the easier it is to treat. So diagnosed at stage 1 or 2, which is the kind of earlier stages of the disease progression, we know 100% of those men will still be alive 5 years later.
100%.
But if it's done 100%,
wow.
But if it's diagnosed at stage 4, that drops to 50%. So half of those men will have been killed by their prostate cancer within 5 years.
Stage 3?
Stage 3 is somewhere in between.
So Amy, this might seem like a really daft question. If there isn't an answer to it, I apologize. But if you feel unwell, what are the sort of symptoms that one might experience?
Not a daft question at all. No.
Oh,
so, you know, it's actually one of the most Googled things is prostate cancer symptoms. But what makes diagnosing prostate cancer early tricky is that often there aren't symptoms. So let me talk to you a little bit about symptoms, but then I also want to talk to you about risk. So
I misheard what you said. What makes it tricky is often
there are no symptoms.
Right. Okay.
So
Ooh.
Things to be aware of is any changes in how you pee. So needing to go more often, getting up at night, feeling urgency, and feeling any pain, any blood in your urine, any of those kind of things. Strongly encourage you to go and speak to a GP. They are probably not prostate cancer, but they might be. And the earlier you find it, the easier it is to treat.
I was checked about 6 months ago, actually.
Great. Yeah, and it's really good to get checked. But when it comes to prostate cancer, because it often doesn't cause symptoms, you also need to understand risk factors. So when we talk about risk factors, well, the first one is age. So the older you get, the higher your risk is. And your risk starts to increase significantly from the age of 50.
Good.
Men who are 50 upwards, your risk is higher. But actually, there are a couple of groups of men who are at even higher risk than that. And that is if you have a family history. So if your dad or your brother has had prostate cancer, that does increase your risk.
Oh, good.
But also for Black men, we know that 1 in 4 Black men will get prostate cancer in their lifetime. And so for those men, it's really important that they know about their risk and actually that they know what they can do about it if they are at higher risk.
3 excellent questions have come in from our audience. Number 1, from Graham Pack. Would this have helped the likes of Chris Hoy, where his prostate cancer unfortunately spread to other areas?
So the news about Chris Hoy is really gutting news. And I think a lot of us are sort of reeling at the moment, thinking about that and to have impacted him at such a young age and to have been diagnosed only after it had spread. I think reading Chris Hoy's story, there's a couple of things that are really illustrative of what I'm talking about. So Chris Hoy has talked about both his father and his grandfather having prostate cancer. So he had that familial risk within, for him. The other thing is that the first he knew of it was when he had some shoulder pain. So he experienced no symptoms prior to that. And so, that's where we just really need to communicate that you shouldn't be waiting for symptoms. Whether or not you have symptoms, check your risk. We have an online risk checker. It makes it really easy to do and to understand what you can do about it if you are at higher risk.
Yeah. One of the things is, and the reason I reacted when my late wife, when the cancer came back, she got this terrible shoulder pain. I just thought it was a shoulder pain. And of course, they whipped her into hospital that day. Because once you get shoulder pain, you got a problem. It ain't good news. Right. Now, this is coming in from Northeastern United States, from our American viewers. And it goes like this. Why the delay in treatment? Are men less likely to ask for help, or is there an overall lack of awareness, says Asa Don Brown?
Probably all of that, and probably that it can be asymptomatic as well.
I think that's it, really. We know that it's really difficult to find something if you feel fit and healthy and well. And so it's, none of us, or I don't want to speak for everyone, but generally speaking, we don't go and visit a doctor when we feel fit and healthy and well. And so it's about changing our perspective on this and recognizing that we do need to respond to risk factors rather than waiting for symptoms. I think awareness is a big issue, and unlike other cancers that have government funded awareness campaigns that talk about lumps and bumps and things to look out for, because prostate cancer is typically asymptomatic, there is not a public health awareness campaign.
Well, it's not something you can really check yourself for, is it?
No, and that's where it is about understanding risk. And I did see another question come up about the PSA blood test. And
here it is.
I think it's a really important question to ask. So first of all, just to explain what this test is. So PSA is a protein. It's produced within the prostate. And that level can go up for all sorts of reasons. So it can go up because of benign enlargement of the prostate. It can go up if you've done a very vigorous bike ride, just because essentially your body's been shaken about a bit. So that can push that level up. It can go up because of an infection, but also it can go up as a sign of prostate cancer. So back in the day, what would have happened is a man would have had a PSA blood test, and if his level was raised, he'd have been sent straight for a biopsy. Now, prostate biopsies can have side effects because you're biopsying a space which is very in amongst where the old form of biopsy would have gone through the rectum. And so you can introduce fecal matter. And so the risk of infection is very high. And so if you're doing unnecessary biopsies, that's a really bad thing. What's really important to say is that in the UK now, men do not go straight for a biopsy. They go for an MRI first. Yes. And the MRI has completely revolutionized the way that we diagnose prostate cancer, because it takes a really high definition image of the prostate. About a third of men get told, you are fine, there's nothing to worry about, go home. The other 2/3 have a targeted biopsy. Biopsy techniques have changed to make them much safer, much more accurate. And what our research shows is that the number of men who are experiencing any form of harm, whether that's an unnecessary biopsy or an infection, has gone down by 79% in recent years.
Wow,
so
well done.
What we know is that the PSA test is a really safe and accurate way of understanding who needs more testing, and that more testing is now safer and more accurate than it has ever been.
Just so you know, I've been tested top to toe. I've had, more blood tests and all the rest of it, because I'm really, it's to the back of my mind. I got to be honest. Right, this coming back in from America. Are there any cognitive issues related to the disease, lethargy, cognitive impairment, and overall feeling of exhaustion? Welcome to my
So
world.
I think there's two sides to that. I think one is that for some people, when they have cancer, there is a kind of generalized, just don't feel like myself. And you hear that sometimes from people who say there were no particular symptoms. I just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like me.
Just felt a bit off, really.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
And so that may be what is being referenced here.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is that we talked a bit earlier about the side effects of treatment, and particularly for men with more advanced disease, the treatments that they are given and the medicines that they are given, actually lethargy is a really significant side effect of some of those treatments. So it can be something that men with prostate cancer do experience.
And especially if you're getting older, your energy levels go down. Now, coming in from Graham Pack, I haven't read it all, so I hope it's sensible. Is there enough spare capacity with the existing number of MRI machines to do scans, or how many extra machines are required?
He's been very sensible today.
Thank God for once. Jeez.
He's normally our resident comedian, Amy.
Well,
It's
we
a
use the
very
word
good
comedian in its
question.
widest sense, Amy, to be honest with you. Thank you, Graham. Good question.
No, it's a great question. And actually, so at the moment, MRI capacity is coping. Like everything in the NHS, it is stretched relatively thin. But we know that men in the UK at the moment routinely have an MRI before their biopsy. It isn't something where we worry about, men not having an MRI because there aren't enough MRI machines. I think the other thing to say is that we funded some research that was published recently that showed how you could use a lot more MRI machines to do prostate scans. So the kind of scan that is done of the prostate is like a super high definition image, and it therefore requires the kind of more modern MRI machines. But we funded some research that looked at whether you could change the settings on some of the older machines to get them up to a good enough standard that they could rule men in or out of having a biopsy. And this research results were fantastic. So at the start, only about a third of these machines were good enough to do the prostate MRIs. By the end, well over 90% of them were. And it's fiddling the settings.
I can understand why you're excited about this, Amy. This is fantastic news, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it really is. And I think there's a lot of progress that we can make in prostate cancer that is about making better use of what we've already got, rather than, I think everyone always wants more money for everything. And I'm not saying that we would say no to more money in the prostate cancer pathway, but actually there are some really quick wins here that are about updating the NHS guidelines to be more reflective of men at highest risk, using the research we already have to make sure that we are diagnosing men in the best possible way.
How do the new biopsies work? How are they much safer?
So partly it's because they are targeted. So that put simply means that you need fewer needles. So if you think of a prostate as being about the size of a walnut, in the old style biopsy, they would have separated that out into kind of zones, and they would have put half a dozen needles into each zone because they didn't know where the cancer was. Now, if you're using a targeted on the basis of an MRI image, you can use far fewer needles because essentially you are taking samples from a space where you are fairly confident that that is the right place to go looking. And so if you use fewer needles, then it's less painful and there's less risk of introducing infection. The other thing is that actually the place that they use to do the biopsy has changed. So they are no longer routinely transrectal biopsies. They're now normally transperineal. And that means you can...
The fascinating thing here...
Hang on, can you just explain those terms?
I just want to say one thing, that I'm just stunned that the prostate, the cause of a lot of problems, may I say, drives me mad, is the size of a walnut. The little swine. That's all I have. I cleaned up what I was going to say. Dear God, it causes a lot of aggravation.
So transrectal and transperineal.
Perineal. So the perineum is the space between the balls and the anus. And so by going through there, you can sterilize that space in a way that you cannot sterilize the rectum. And so it makes the biopsy much safer.
Look, here's the thing, right? Let's be honest about it, and let's not be BBC about it. It's right. It ain't sexy. It ain't nice. You just got to go and do it. All right. We've got to put big boys' pants on and just go and do it. And you saw that Paul Claridge, who is a regular viewer, a plus side of having had cancer and going through it again. This guy has the world's worst luck. Is that I've also been tested for prostate cancer. I had bowel cancer. I now have skin cancer, and the prostate test was negative. Oh, and I find MRI machines fascinating. I mean, who wouldn't? They helped save my life, which they did.
Thank you for the message you sent me the other day, Paul, by the way. It's a lovely message, and I did respond to you.
Amy, let me ask you this. This is another, I'm reeling here, another sensible question from this man. Are there other types of machines being developed that are smaller and quicker to use than the MRI scanners that maybe could be put into a large doctor's surgery? Good idea.
So at the moment, MRI is the gold standard. And the reason for that is that because it is ruling men out of further testing. And you don't want to be kind of doing a rush job. There's been work looking at whether you could do it with an ultrasound or various things like that. Yeah. But the quality of the image isn't good enough. Right. And so, I know you talked before about, the sort of factor of the biopsies, but I think the crucial thing now is that men are only having biopsies if there is a significant suspicion of cancer. Yeah. So if you can massively reduce the number of men having unnecessary biopsies, that makes a huge difference. And I think if you said to most people, it's not going to be exactly a pleasant procedure, but at the same time, this thing could save your life. That most men would make the choice to have that biopsy.
Okay, well, it sucks, but let's get on with it. I mean, that's what you got to do. You got to suck it up. Mandy Miller's saying this. Is it true it makes men sterile? Please explain why. Thanks. Ooh, you've opened a can of worms, Mandy.
So it depends what treatment you have, but because what the prostate does is it makes the fluid that sperm travel in. And so if your treatment for prostate cancer is to remove the prostate, which for some men that's the treatment, or if your treatment is to irradiate the prostate, so treat it with radiotherapy, then in both those scenarios, yes, it would leave a man sterile. But I think what's really important to say, and it comes back to the conversation earlier about some prostate cancers being slow growing, we do know of scenarios where men who have been diagnosed and who haven't finished their plans for making a family have been able to delay treatments so that they were able to complete their family, carefully monitored by doctors in the meantime to make sure that they were staying safe. And then the treatment came after the baby was born.
And if you're thinking about starting a family at my age, please go and see a therapist immediately. It's a terrible idea. It truly is. I just want to say, Amy, fantastic. Always like having you on the show. Thank you so much. We like to think of you as a friend of the Midday Show. And what you're doing is tremendous. What you're doing is tremendous. You explain, how can I put this? You explain really complicated stuff in a way that all of us can take on board and understand and get to grips with. And that is a real skill. And we bless you for that.
It is. Thank you. It's been lovely to see you. Have a great week.
Thank you. And good luck with everything. Good luck. And please come back any time. You're always welcome.
Come back again. Bye-bye.
Amy Rylance there. She's fantastic. Do you know what? Before we get our next guest on, it's amazing that I'm just thinking it's so important. And the government always finds money for completely shit causes that, that are just mind-bogglingly stupid. And initiatives that are absolutely nonsense. And this is put money in proper places. Come on. It's not difficult. It's not difficult. Sorry, it makes me absolutely bloody furious. Absolutely furious. That was very encouraging. Didn't you think, Neil?
Wasn't it? Yeah, very much so.
Because thank you, Asa. I appreciate that. It's because you see the money being pissed up the wall and you think, what the how this is costing billions, and it's nonsense. And it's on initiatives which are completely stupid. And I think, who the hell's doing the planning? If they spent half an hour with Amy Rylance, they go, okay, let's put some money there. Let's save 12,000 potential lives a year, for sure. Why don't we do that? Why don't we do that? Our next guest, see, it's non-stop today. I'm excited. He's been very, very patient, waiting in the digital black room. The back room there, he's been there for 2 days. Thank God we brought in supplies. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Farrelly. Hello, Mark.
Good afternoon, guys.
How are you?
Hello, Mark.
Hi, I'm really well, thank you. Yes.
That's very, very good. That's very, very good. Tell us all about yourself and why you're here. We're liking your wallpaper, by the way.
Thank you very much.
We rarely see wallpaper anymore. I think that's good.
Well, so I'm an actor and a writer, and I specialize in one-person shows. And I have a particular accent towards mental health. And the show that's particularly relevant at the moment is a show called The Silence of Snow, which is about the writer Patrick Hamilton, who wrote plays like Rope, Gaslight, which gave us the modern term gaslighting.
Ah,
Yeah.
To which, for anyone who doesn't know, I mean, just look at the work of Donald Trump. But in general, of course.
Careful, never disrespect the Don on this show.
Yes, I thought
never disrespect the Don on this show.
Thought might be in tricky
might
waters
come over.
there. But to play with people's sense of
Don.
reality. And so the show is at Jermyn Street Theatre on Sunday afternoon this week at 5 p.m. And it's a portrait of someone who struggled very, very much with his own demons. Patrick is not a better known writer than he already is because his output was so weakened by alcoholism and depression. He had electrotherapy treatment to try and overcome
really?
it. Yeah, exactly. This is in the 1950s we're talking about, of course.
Mystery guest just turned up, Mark. Mystery guest.
Oh, yes.
Only known by the Super K, Liz Saul.
Oh, Liz.
Of the BBC. Hello, Liz. How lovely to see you. Always
good to see you all as well.
Never a choice. So Mark is on at a certain London theatre in Jermyn Street, and it's a one-man play, but it's about the guy. The guy's output was fantastic.
Gaslight,
which was, what was that with? I'm trying to think of it was in the film. It was wonderful.
Yeah, well, there's the Ingrid Bergman did the film of Gaslight.
Yeah.
Patrick Hamilton's Rope was made into a film by Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was a very powerful writer. He was very witty, and I think the sadness of it for me is that, as I said, his output was cut so short, unfortunately. So the play is a tribute to him, but it is also raising money for Mind because it is dedicated to a friend of mine who was the first person I gave to read the piece because it was the first thing I'd ever written, and I wanted some feedback and reassurance. Right. And so Tim, my friend, gave me some very good feedback, and he said, the thing is, Mark, don't wait for anyone to produce it or whatever. Just get it on a stage, and I'll be sitting there in the front row, first performance, cheering you on. And he didn't manage to because he took his life.
No.
Yeah. So the play is dedicated to him. It keeps his memory alive. But I also make a collection of Mind at the end of every performance. So it's
when we had, I got
to
say something to you, Mark, about Mind, and
they're great. They save lives.
I find we try. Yeah, let me get to the end of my sentence, kids. That we tried in the earlier incarnation of the Midday show, and had other people involved with it. We tried so hard to form an alliance with Mind and give them. They were just impossible. It was sad because I believe in what they're doing, and we wanted to amplify what they're doing, but absolutely not interested at all.
Wow.
So why do you think he took his own life? And was that a horrible surprise and a shock to you, or could you see the writing on the wall?
No, it was a huge surprise. There was no
Ugh.
indication of it at all. We had been to a gig at the Albert Hall a few days before, and he was in very good form. And that turned out to be the last time I saw him.
Jesus.
I think that both of us at that point in our lives, we both just split up with long-term partners.
Mhm.
In my case, it was a 15-year relationship. In Tim's case, him and his girlfriend had been together 10 years. So we were both in sort of kind of shaky, fragile territory.
Yeah.
And I could, he knew that I was not in a great place, and I assumed that he would be struggling a bit. So we got together as mates to try and see each other through this period of our lives. And for a time that was great. And then it was an almighty shock when I got a phone call one morning saying he's gone.
Oh,
How old was he?
So Tim was, I think, 48.
Jeez.
Oh gosh, and that's no age at all.
Ooh,
No, absolutely. And he was very, very much loved by many, many people. He was the sort of archetypal life and soul of the party.
But they always are. This is the tragedy and the extra tragedy, Mark, with this story, which is hitting us hard, is that there you are, you've written this piece about this brilliant writer who's fighting his demons. You give it to your best mate because you know he's going to give you the best feedback, and then he takes, an ultimate course of action. It's a horrible story arc, as we would say if you were putting it together, isn't it?
Well, it is. And for full disclosure, I've now known 4 people who've taken their lives.
Oh God.
3
The male
males.
suicide isn't it the most common cause of death?
The biggest cause of death in men between 18 and 48. The biggest cause of death in the UK between 18 and 48 is suicide.
Yeah.
I met someone.
No one believes that. Every time you say that statistic, no, must be cancer, must be road accident. It's not. No.
It does beg the question. Why? Why do men not feel they can?
Well,
Find a
we
solution.
started a radio station just to
Reach
talk
out.
about it, and then people
Get help.
can't bear it anymore.
There's still
No,
a
I felt-
certain amount of stigma attached to it among guys, and guys my age,
Yeah.
and with the younger generation, if you like, or your teenager. I witness teenagers now, and actually they're really good at checking in with each other for reasons I won't go into. I was sitting in A&E over the weekend at stupid o'clock in the morning, but the young people there were sort of like, "Are you all right? How are you doing mentally? I know you've got cuts and bruises, but mentally, how are you doing?" And I thought that's actually really touching. These are a load of young people, but yet people who are sort of 25 to 45, they're kind of like, "Oh no, I'm still meant to be this, or still meant to be that." And the blokes who are not necessarily on the ball like that, they feel they can't speak out because they're being cowed by their female partners. It happens the other way around as well. And it feels like they're caught up.
Is it that men don't feel that they think they've got this idea of what they should be like as a man? And is it that mask that they're forcing themselves to wear that stops
You think that would have been left behind with the war generation, that men are this and women are that and blah, blah, blah. But no, it seems to have filtered down into our generation, into the younger generation.
I noticed what you say about the young people, Liz. You're absolutely right. I noticed them talking about their mind as if it's almost a domain that they have some control over. Where when I was growing up, it was assumed if you're mentally ill, it was just like a genetic crapshoot. It's just bad luck. But we know now there are things. There's many more ologies. All the ologies have advanced. Most of them.
I'm a bit reticent to label everybody, but yes, it's nice that young people, as in 18 to 25, are a lot more aware of their mental health and a lot more aware of other people and looking out for their friends.
Yeah.
Mark, I want to go back to you, because did you find it cathartic writing this piece?
Yes, extremely. And I find it very cathartic performing it because I play Hamilton's life from start to finish, and I don't think it's a spoiler alert to say that he died quite young. He was 56 when he died, and the cause of death was alcoholism, but his doctor said, "You're committing suicide in installments."
Yeah.
And I remember when originally an earlier draft of it had a slightly more optimistic ending, and Patrick Hamilton's biographer read it and said to me, "Listen, you have to have a downbeat ending to this piece because you've got to be honest about it." And I remember performing it at the.
What was the what could the alternative ending be if it's optimistic?
I had an ending where I stepped out of character and started to speak as myself, and it didn't work, and I can see why now, and it has to end the way it does.
Yeah.
But I remember doing it at the King's Head in Islington, and it ends with his death. And then somebody in the audience called out, and they really meant it. They were not being ironic. They said that was really uplifting, because I think sometimes you've got to go and look at these stories and experience these traumas and difficulties. I mean, we were talking about, why Neil said, why does it happen? If you look at the 4 people I've lost, obviously Tim I knew best, but 3 of them were men and 1 was a woman. And the unchanging statistic with suicide is that 3/4 of suicides are male. And to me, it's very, very much to do with an inability to communicate.
There is, I've said what I'm going to say so many times over the years since we started this, years ago, I guess it is about 7 years ago, is that when we had the studio and subsequently I've interviewed many guests who have either attempted to end their own lives and mercifully failed, or they've been the brother, sister, mom and dad of someone who ended their own lives. The most fascinating and morbidly fascinating thing is every single guest I've had who survived their suicide attempt. I'm using my language carefully because I know the landscape has changed. But every single one of them who survived told me the same thing. The moment they started, whichever method they were going to use to end their life, the second they did it, they regretted it. The second they did it. The very moment. Whether they jumped, there's a club in San Francisco of people who have tried to end their own lives by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. And the people who survive have formed a club, as you kind of would. And again, they've all said the same thing. The moment their fingertips left the metal, they realized they'd made a terrible mistake. Terrible mistake. And every instance, Mark, and this is what's so sad about your friend Tim, they all said, I was alone, no one to reach out to. I was a disgrace to the family would be better off without me, and all of these things. And you know
Classic
what?
depression, isn't it?
None of these things are true. They are lies you tell to yourself, because every family member of those survivors have said, we love you. We don't care your business is failing or you effed up with this, that. We don't care. We love you. We want you around.
Yeah, I would say in regard to Tim, the world is a worse place without him.
Without him,
yeah, for sure.
Yes.
His presence and his energy are very much missed.
As is often the case,
Yeah.
People don't realise their own worth.
No, and he certainly didn't. I was just going to say there's a very good film documentary called The Bridge about what Russ was just talking about. There's a whole documentary that's a very good watch and is, again, actually very cathartic about the people who attempted to take their lives on the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah, and you're absolutely right that it's never the right choice. Unfortunately, the brain can give you very, very overpowering messages that it is right, and that's the danger zone, and that's where talking is absolutely essential.
And something else, if we're going to gain anything out, I'm not sure where Neil's gone, but I hope he comes back. like a little
Maybe his
jack in-
signal dropped out.
He's like a little jack in the box. Is one of the things is, and you touched on it, Mark. You touched on it, but it's so important. You know, it's no good saying after the event, "Oh, I should have phoned Fred. Why didn't I phone?" Get off your ass and phone your mate. Just do it. It's a phone. Don't text. Don't
There he is.
text. There he is. We missed your little smiling face. Don't text. All right, and yeah, mate. All right. It's a nonsense. Go old school. For 30 seconds in your stupid day, make a phone call about someone you're worried about and just check in with them. Because it's 30 seconds to you. It will change their day. It really will change their day. Please, if you're concerned, just reach out. It's no big deal. It's 30 seconds of your time. You've got 30 seconds.
Yeah, you never truly know where somebody is at. And things like social media are no guide to
right.
how well someone is doing. You know, you're absolutely right. Just reach out, make a phone call. How are you? And how are you really? And something that is really, really helpful I found is share with someone something that you're struggling with at the moment, because that gives people permission to say,
Mark, just a feeling that you're not alone. It's a great starting point to feel better. I've never been suicidal, but I've been in that kind of stage before where I didn't want to die, but I didn't particularly want to live either. I just couldn't see a way out of this chronic gloopy meh that I was stuck in, and it was just grey and dull and dark. But it makes it 10 times worse when you feel that you should be something because society expects you to be. So I'm saying to every man listening, and do you know what? If I wasn't going away this weekend, I would love to come and see your performance. It sounds fantastic. Don't be afraid to reach out.
I'm there in spirit, Mark. I'm there in spirit, but I'm banned. So I'm there in spirit.
There is nothing unmanly or makes you less of a man for reaching out and taking the mask off. If anything, it makes you more of a man because you're more in touch with yourself and what aspects of you might need healing or some attention or some love.
Yes.
I'll tell you the sad thing, Mark, and I'm being really very, very open. And Neil, what you just said echoes, you know, it's the fear. It's not like it's not even I'm so depressed because this, that, and the other. It's like, oh Christ, this is just shit. I've had enough of it. I mean, that's kind of it. That's basically what you're saying. This gloom, and it's just all pervading, and you got to dig deep, and you got to fight it, and that's what you got to do. When we start, Mark, because of like the subject matter of your play, the loss of your friend Tim, clearly the passion that you feel for this whole subject, and I'm going to be very, very open. We started a channel, it's called Men's Radio, only to deal with this issue, primarily to deal with this issue. Could we get any support? No. Did we get any funding? No. Everybody was just like, yeah, but we're kind of bored with it. And eventually I thought, well, enough's enough. And so I created the Midday show. Neil wonderfully came on, Liz came on, Phil Dave and all the other gang. And we just lightened the mood. We're much lighter now. I don't go into men's mental health. Because what you do interests me so much when I read the background and everything, I thought I'd love to get Mark Farrelly on. But we don't do it. And the reason is people had enough. I could just tell they were fatigued. They were like, oh, not men's mental health again. And I'll give you another. No. I'm not talking about you. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm saying there is such. All right, I'm very passionate about it. I'm sorry if I'm getting emotional, but
there's only so much signposting you can do.
There's such a freaking need for it, Mark. And you provide the platform, and everyone goes, "Oh, really? You know, we like it when you're silly." Okay, well, so Neil and I fart around. Neil's much more sensible and serious than I am, but it's. You understand what I'm saying? It's a shame. It's like, so I was called in to give a talk, which I did quite a bit, and it was about men's mental health, right? Okay, and they put it out to all the local GPs in the area. We cancelled the talk. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But if I give a talk about showbiz or my silly memories or just farting around on the stage and being silly, packed houses.
Yeah.
So it's It's a difficult
Why?
fight because people are. Why? Because people are exhausted from it. People are exhausted from it. I think that's the problem. They just don't want to hear about it.
Well, and I think there's a lot of inbuilt attitude of, I don't want to go there. That's too upsetting or distressing. I remember, so just for for full disclosure, my part of my background is that I was suicidal about 10 years ago, around the time of what happened with Tim. That felt like the final straw for me.
Yeah,
and I got out of it, but I found the right therapist who worked for me.
Thank God.
I mean, not who worked for me, but who worked psychologically for me.
With you.
Helped you.
Yeah, and 18 months later, which again might sound a tall order to people, but 18 months later, she said to me, "I don't think you need to come anymore." Never
Fantastic.
I was able to get better in that way. But I do remember that, for example, my dad, bless him, he was very distressed and unhappy that I was going to therapy. He thought that meant he'd failed or something, and that there was something terribly wrong with me. And to him, going
this
to
is
therapy,
just societal conditioning.
yes,
Exactly.
he equated it with failure. And embarrassment and even shame, perhaps. And he now sees it very differently. But I had to take him on that journey with me. And there are lots of people who still see it that way. I wish that Tim had some therapy, but for whatever reason, he wouldn't do it.
No, I'm always very open about it. I had a wonderful therapist, Rosie Whetstone. I always shout her out on this show. And she stayed with me for all the way through this difficult period in my life with various things going on. And she was fantastic. And it certainly wouldn't be equated with failure on anyone that brought me up. Not at all. And no one knows everything. No one knows everything.
And it's a multitude of things. Some of it's in your DNA, without doubt.
Yeah.
I think it's a biological thing. Some of it's in your upbringing. Some of it is circumstantial. You don't know. There's 1,001 different reasons why it happens, but it happens.
And I think therapy and counselling has come a long way. I myself was very reticent about it because I was sort of sent along to go and have a chat with someone as a child, but it was very much for kind of children are usually seen and not heard. So why is this one not shutting up kind of thing? Whereas nowadays it's like we need to find, and I talk for a living, so clearly I never shut up. But more recently, I was offered bereavement counselling when my mum died, and I was offered bereavement counselling both as one-to-one and in a group by the hospice where she was. And actually it was wonderful, and it was such a different experience. And so in terms of advocating that, it's come on leaps and bounds, and people actually listen to you and will offer some practical solutions. Or in the case of bereavement, because everyone's bereavement journey is different and grieves differently, just to let you be with it. And it's not judging you with it.
It all has value. I think there's a place for all of it, very much so. But I still find it frustrating that there's still these beliefs around there's something wrong, or someone's done something wrong, or someone's failed, or someone's let you down. Also, want to point out, I think the latest research you were saying about it being DNA genetic, the genetic component is actually very small. The scientists have understood now. Yeah. It's much more environmental, and particularly belief systems, what we believe about ourselves, what we believe about the world, how we perceive the world. There's even a science now, relatively new science. Bruce Lipton, don't know if you've heard of him. He's sort of in the mind, body, spirit genre, but he's it's not airy fairy. He's a scientist, and he wrote a book called The Biology of Belief, and he's talking about epigenetics or beyond genetics, where certain genes can be turned on and off by our perception of the environment that we're in. So how we perceive the environment, how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive the surroundings is all important. So we need support to be able to turn that spotlight in a loving way on ourselves, to have that self-care and be able to see yourself from a non-judgmental point of view. But when you're depressed, you would judge yourself ruthlessly.
Oh, Jesus. It's like having your worst enemy inside your head, beating the crap out of it. Being depressed is like, it really is the worst person in the world who hates you the most, except it's yourself, obviously. And they're inside your head and they're beating the living crap out of you 24/7.
Yeah, the so-called inner critic. And it's not
it's horrendous. I fight it every day. I know. I'm perfectly honest about it. This is so true from Paul. Paul, we fought against this. We did our best. We had all the doctors. You can imagine, one after the other coming on the shows. Counselling and therapy for certain issues or conditions is often very difficult or impossible to get through the NHS. When we started our shows 6-7 years ago, it was a 6-week waiting list. It's like, I think it's 18 months now. I think it's like 18 months. It might as well be 18 centuries. If you're going to bug around with that, it's ridiculous.
Paul, if you want to, you don't have to, but if you want to message me privately and tell me what the mental health condition is, maybe I could do some signposting. I don't know. I may not be able to, but I may.
Bless you, Neil.
So let me know on that. Obviously,
here's what we've gleaned from today with Mark. This is what I'm gleaning from you, Mark. Most importantly, I can hear somebody in the background. I don't know what it is. Mark, most importantly, you said that you had you were feeling suicidal, and your therapy in just 18 months, which is a heartbeat really in the great scheme of things, and you're not there. That is the most positive, fantastic thing. It's so important. It's not a
and you're
life
living
sentence
proof as well that it's possible.
And you're living proof.
To
and
be
not
well.
only that, you've bounced back. I hate that phrase, but you know what I mean. You've pulled yourself out from the abyss, right?
Yeah.
And you're there. You're not just functioning, you're flourishing. And what have you done? You've turned what was a big negativity in your life, and trust me, we've all been there. So I'm not being in the least judgmental, the last person. I'm the last to do that. And you've written what is clearly a brilliant play. I read all the stuff about it, and it's highly well received, and you're performing it. So you're not just fulfilling your artistic joy and you as an artist, but you're helping others through your work. It's like the most positive thing you could possibly want. It's fantastic.
So-called turning the healing corner, where it's you get to a point where you're feeling so much better, then you feel ready to put work out in the world or yourself out in the world to help other people follow the, leave crumbs, signposting, a trail to follow. How long's the run for, Mark? How does it run for?
Well, so the show has been running sporadically for quite a few years. So I'm just doing the one at Jermyn Street, and then I tour it around the country. So it's if you look at my website, you can see all the dates for it.
What is your website? I'll pop it on the screen, Mark.
So it's markfarrelly.co.uk.
Right, but with me, I'll pop that on there.
Yeah.
And while he's doing that, tell us some of the places that you're going to be going over the next few weeks. Remind us.
So BBC. You are so BBC. That's brilliant. That's fantastic.
Where am I going? Hang on, I got my schedule here. So,
go Liz.
So yeah, Jermyn Street on Sunday.
Is that Sunday afternoon or evening? 5 p.m.
It's a 5 p.m. show.
5 p.m. show.
I think there's 2 L's, Neil.
Sorry.
Yes, there are 2 L's.
So
you and your 2 L's.
I just wanted to say to Russ about, what you said about me doing therapy. I think if I had known at the start, if you'd said to me, you're going to be doing this for 18 months, I would have thought, no, that's too much. A few weeks, will that sort it? Yeah. And I think I just want to say to anyone who's in the position I was in, perhaps, it might seem a long time, but it does pass. And, what if you wait another 18 months? You could have done it by then.
It's probably fair to say there's also lots of little wins along the way, and you can look back and see your progress along the way. And it's always good to get that low hanging fruit, to get the little wins. It really just comes down again.
Bloody right. And there's also, Longie, and you've made a wonderful point, but there's also, if you're going to embark on that journey, you will have weeks where you go, oh God, that was awful. That was just terrible. And then the next week you make some fantastic, but stick with it. It's like life. It's complicated. It's not a 58-minute show. There's ups and downs. You gotta roll with it for a little bit.
That's life.
That's what people say. Riding Hyde in April, shot down in May. Mark Farrelly, have a wonderful time at that certain theatre on Jermyn Street. It's the only one. You can't miss it.
Yeah,
it's right opposite.
Good luck with the show, Mark. Really good to talk to you.
Really well.
From one guy to another, I'm so glad to see that you're well. And
here.
Yeah.
Blooming right.
All the best. Good to hear good news. So
all the best to
congratulations,
you.
mate.
Yeah,
And
thank
thank
you. I
you.
really appreciate it.
Really uplifting, Mark. Thanks a lot, man. Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
so much.
Bye. Like him a lot. We like him.
Yes.
We like him
Oh, yes.
a lot. We like him. We think he's good. Right.
Oh.
So I don't know what's going on. God only knows. Right. So Liz, what news?
Hello.
What news do you have
Yes.
quickly for us?
Before we all disappear, I thought you'd like to know while I'm sitting here in rather fetching yellow Pudsey t-shirt, because it's that time of year again. The fundraising night for BBC Children in Need is looming in a couple of weeks' time, and between the 4th and the 8th of November, all of BBC local radio, so that's all the local radio and digital stations, so whichever area you're in around the country, you know, whether you're in Manchester or whether you're in Shropshire or whether you're in Surrey, Kent.
Are you going to go through every area of the
Hearts,
United
beds,
Kingdom?
butts. Yes, I'm naming a few around the place.
Jesus
But they're
Christ.
doing some.
It's
We're doing
everywhere. Get
1,000-mile swim between us. Collectively swimming 1,000 miles between the 4th and the 8th of November. Now, my contribution to that is 5 miles.
You're swimming. I'm sorry. Neil, are you in shock? Because what I heard is, hello, I'm Liz Saul. I'm going to be swimming 1,000 miles.
No, not just
Terry
me.
Wogan.
Collectively. Yes. Collectively, BBC local radio staff are swimming 1,000 miles between them to raise awareness of BBC Children in Need and to raise funds for children in need, which of course is a really worthy cause, helps kids predominantly in the UK. And yeah, it's that time of year where it all happens. So I'm in training
and there's so
at the
many people
moment.
in the BBC, they're only swimming 1 metre each.
Yeah.
So,
Actually, you
that's
jest
just
about
the
it.
Neil, that's just the middle management. We're going to get their clipboards wet.
Actually, you jest, but there are a couple of BBC presenters who can't actually swim. So they're like, do you know what? I'm going to get in the pool. I'm going to have a lesson and talk about mental
I'm really
health.
hoping
It's like, I'm going to
Jeremy
overcome
Vine and
this.
he's got wearing concrete shoes, but that's just me.
But yes, there are some people who can't actually swim, and they are doing a length of their pool to sort of overcome a fear for their own mental health. If you Google BBC Swimathon, BBC 1,000 Mile Swim.
BBC, they don't help us.
Well, you can plug me then, because I'm contributing. I'm contributing to the swimming, so that's what I'm doing.
The show wouldn't be complete without one of your facetious comments. I was hoping for one before the end of the show, and you didn't disappoint me, buddy.
And you got it, boy. We got. I don't fancy. It's good, and I still miss Terry Wogan because I thought he was the heart and soul of it. But anyway, there we go. Liz,
but yes, that's what I'm doing. I'm about to go for another swim. I'm in training at the moment, and the official swimming is between the 4th and 8th of November.
Well, good luck with that, Liz. I'll see you Wednesday on the Midday Show. Going to try and snag a really good guest. Still trying to get the guy talking about gamma brainwaves, which is really interesting.
Say that again. The what? What? Don't rush through that.
Gamma brainwaves.
I love it. I don't know what it is.
We have 4 different sorts of brainwaves: beta, alpha, delta, theta. 5, and gamma. Okay, we're all in beta now. Alpha is more relaxed, more open.
I think that's when they test a website.
Theta is deep healing, and gamma is super focused and improves performance. And his name's Dr. Chris Walton. And I'll send him an email now because he was supposed to be on. We got COVID. But
and on a final note, I did my biggest funeral up to date. Yesterday.
How did it go?
It was very complicated and it was wonderful. It was a wonderful, wonderful send-off. I was privileged and honored to have been asked to be the celebrant for the great actor David Graham. If you're thinking who's that, is the voice of Grandpa Pig, Thunderbird, Supercar, Four Feather, everything. He's an amazing man. He was 99 and still working. And it was a beautiful, and I've received some lovely messages from total strangers today who were at the service. And thank you all
that's
very
good.
much.
Did someone utter the line "Thunderbirds a go" during the ceremony?
Well, I did when Dee Anderson, who's a mate of mine, who's the daughter of Jerry and Sylvia Anderson, who created all of Thunderbirds, Stingray, Supercar, Four Feather, everything like that, UFO. I said, well, I did mutter anything can happen in the next half hour, which was always at the opening of Stingray. Right, that's it. Thank you, everybody. Longie Long will be back on. And Neil, I'm still reeling from that terrible joke that bloke told. You got to tell Liz off air. Diabolical. Thank God. It makes me feel good that at least you and I won't be that dumb. Everybody,
Oh dear.
everybody.
See you.
Bye, gang.
Bye.
Bye now.